Sambatskano Mongol Truda, and welcome to Talk with me. Anaraa Nyamdorj is a very talented and very worldly trilingual Mongolian lawyer. Anar is also co-founder and executive director of Ulaanbaatar's Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual and Transgender Centre. This is the first NGO in Mongolia dedicated to social, legislative and institutional change relating to discrimination and abuse against Mongolia's LGBT community. Anaraa Nyamdorj, welcome to you. I'm so glad to meet you today.
Thank you for
inviting me. Can I call you Anar?
Yes, please do.
Anar, you're the executive director at the LGBT Centre in Ulaanbaatar, which of course stands for Lesbian, Gay, Bisexual and Transgender Centre. Tell me about your role as executive director.
I'm actually one of the founders of the center, and we started the center back in 2007 because at that point of time we didn't really have any NGOs working specifically on the whole array of issues that are LGBT rights. And at that point of time we had only some NGOs working on HIV/AIDS issues from the gay men's perspective. But we needed something more holistic that would be addressing so many types of discriminations that we face as sexuality minority people in Mongolia, as LGBT people, starting from discrimination, and discrimination goes in so many areas of life, starting from discrimination at school, starting going on to discrimination at workplace, and inability to get your family recognized under the law, etc. So in every sphere of life that you can even think of, you would have discrimination against LGBT people. So we needed to address that. We needed to make sure that everyone in Mongolia, regardless of our sexual orientation or gender identity, that we had the right to be and we had the right to exist as we are. But somehow this was so forgotten because throughout the 90s, when Mongolia became a democratic country, we had civil rights movements, for example, gender equality movement or child rights movement, etc. But the LGBT rights were always put on the back burner because there was this tendency among people, even among the civil society people, to categorize human rights issues as more important and more relevant and less relevant. Yeah. So we needed to address that, because when you have a reality, when you are denied your existence, when you are denied that you are who you are and that you don't have a right to exist as you are, there's a huge problem, because under the Constitution of Mongolia, as well as any other laws and the international instruments, everyone is equal.
That's right.
So we had to do it. And we had to start somewhere. So.
And you did it.
And we did it.
And you,
despite the various problems we had with the registration, because they wouldn't even register us as an NGO, saying that we would set the wrong example for youth, that the name of the center was going against the so-called traditional values.
It's amazing that the center was only registered in 2009. I mean, that's
nearly after
so
3
recent.
years after being initiated, yes. Basically, Mongolia is a signatory to many international instruments, UN treaties and covenants, and all of those instruments outlaw discrimination on the basis of sex, for example. And in 1994, there was a case that went to Human Rights Committee that provided an explanation that sex is also included, the category of sex, which is a protected ground, and that it is also inclusive of sexual orientation. But somehow that interpretation was never taken into account when Mongolian legislators have been working on various documents. So when we started the process of going into the international platforms and multilateral platforms, when Mongolia is a member of and party to, we basically started from the strategic point of exposing various violations of rights and discriminations that we face. And one of the most pressing issues at that point of time was hate crime.
Exactly, hate crimes.
Exactly. Yeah. And so, and those hate crimes were taking place in Mongolia because people were lacking information that sexual orientation is not something they choose, it's just something you're born with, that everyone has a sexual orientation, innate, natural sexual orientation that leans either towards, you know, opposite sex or to same sex. And because of this ignorance and lack of information, so many things have happened and so many cases were documented by the center. And one of the most heinous ones...
Tell me about the most heinous hate crime. I want viewers to know and understand what happens here on a regular occurrence.
One of the most heinous crimes that everyone in Mongolia knows was a case that happened in 1998, where a very popular pop singer, Tumur, was murdered
and beheaded.
And his head was burnt in a stove. Hate crimes are a very special type of a crime where the victim is not the only person who is suffering from that. It sends a very strong message to that community where that person is coming from. A hate crime is a very special crime because it gives a message of terror to those people who belong to that community where that victim is coming from. So the case of 1998, it terrorized the whole of LGBT community. However closeted they were at that point of time, however quiet they were at the time, it terrorized everyone, because just to think that you could be killed and beheaded, it sent a huge terror message. And another one that took place was back in 2009, where 3 trans girls and okay, so let me explain what is a transgender person. A transgender person is somebody whose gender identity is not aligned with their birth sex. And so we have a continuum of trans identities, starting from people who would be all right with their gender identity if they just cross-dressed, and they are called transvestites. Of course, on the transgender spectrum, but you know, they're fine with just cross-dressing. And then we have transgender people who identify as opposite or differently from their birth sex. And if they do undertake some medical intervention to correct their body as they feel, we call them transsexuals. So this is the first time I'm giving an interview on TV.
I'm so grateful.
Post-transition, so...
thank you. When did you have your transition? You had medical procedure 4 years ago,
yes,
did you say?
I began hormone replacement therapy back in 2011, and that was the time that Mongolia, for the first time in history, had even access to testosterone. Monos was the one to import Nebido, which is one of the best HRT hormone replacement therapy available for trans men.
Wonderful. You're feeling better. I mean, you're happier.
I am so much more happier, absolutely, because to feel intrinsically that you don't sound the way you know you should.
Exactly,
You don't look the way you know you should. And, you know, to be also, not to be only uncomfortable in your body, but to also be imposed the gender roles and gender stereotypes of the gender you're supposed to be, but you're not, that you never identified with. That's something extremely psychologically difficult. And so when we, trans people, try to correct that and undertake measures such as hormone replacement therapy or gender confirmation surgeries, we do face a lot of discrimination because of the fact that we are transgressing the so-called natural bounds. But then people don't understand that nature is diverse, that diversity is the norm in nature. Not exclusion, but the norm, not the exception.
That's right.
And so trans people have always been there, you know, as lesbian and gay people have always been there. But it's the fact of, you know, 20th century medical development and progress that is finally allowing trans people to claim our bodies and to be finally comfortable in that. And so we had up to a few years ago, maybe up to 10 years ago, even like globally, people didn't really talk about trans people. We were assumed to be part of the lesbian community, you know, because, you know, if you're a trans man, you're butch, and then because you have a female body, you are slotted into a lesbian community, and then you feel so outside of that community because lesbians are women attracted to female bodies and attracted to femaleness and to women, and of course on the outside we might look like, you know, trans men prior to transition. We might look like lesbians and we might find ourselves in that community, but that is not our community. And then with trans women as well, because they're growing up and being socialized into their male bodies and their male gender, however difficult it is, they find themselves in gay communities. And then we start the process of discovering, or maybe of claiming, our true identities. And so in Mongolia, that process began probably many years ago, back in 2004-05, where trans girls became quite vocal about their identities and started cross-dressing and started going onto the streets. And that was a time when they were picked up as being different, because obviously with trans women, because testosterone is such a strong hormone that once your voice changes, it just stays. So no matter how much beautiful makeup you wear, no matter how beautiful you look on the outside, people can identify that you're probably male, that you're male-bodied. And so back in 2009, there was a case where 3 trans girls were picked off the streets, abducted, and taken to a cemetery and beaten up. They were made to perform sexual acts on each other as well as on the attackers. And they were beaten up, etc. And it was such a shocking incident that none of the victims wanted to report that incident to the police because they were not sure that the police would take their case seriously.
Which is very often the case,
Which is
Anar.
often the case, because again, the police are part of the society, and because we have this overall general ignorance around these issues, you can expect ignorance from the police. And also they were scared at that point of time to approach the police because they used to be picked up from the street for just being who they are, because they were thought to be prostitutes, they were thought to be sex workers, because obviously they're so beautifully made up and they're wearing such beautiful clothes that somehow people would associate that glitz and glamour with sex work. And so all 3 of those girls had negative encounters with police before, and that's why they didn't want to go to the police. And when we documented the case, they were unwilling to even get the case documented. But again, it's obviously the trauma-related reaction.
Anar, what percentage of hate crimes go unreported? What's your estimate, if you don't have an exact figure, in Mongolia?
I would say
50%?
More than that. I would say 90% of all hate crimes go unreported. But I'm really happy that the new criminal code draft, for the first time in the history of Mongolia, has defined hate crimes as...
in draft?
Yeah, it's in draft form, and it's been tabled with the parliament. We don't know when it's going to get passed, but it has to be there in the criminal code because as a group of a society, as a minority within society, minorities are targeted for being different. And so this is one of the effective regulations that would allow us to at least know that we are protected, that if we are violated, if we are attacked, we can go to the police, and that the police will have to take down the case and document it, and then undertake measures, because most of the times what happened was the police wouldn't even take it seriously. Whatever the crimes that are being committed against us, they would say, oh, whatever.
Oh, sounds like you're taking baby steps, but you're moving forward. Listen, Anna, you're going to Geneva on Sunday. Tell me about what you're doing in Geneva.
I'm actually doing advocacy with permanent missions or embassies of various countries that would be a part of the Mongolian review. Basically, there is this new human rights mechanism called Universal Periodic Review that Mongolia was reviewed under back in 2010, and that was the first cycle. And we utilized this new Human Rights Council mechanism under the UN to raise the issues not only in Mongolia but also on the international sphere, that there are these kind of unacceptable crimes that are happening against LGBT community in Mongolia. And so this mechanism allows for the Human Rights Council member states, and all countries are member states of the UN Human Rights Council, to see what kind of practices around human rights that particular government has, and where are gaps that the government of whatever the country can undertake to address those human rights issues and to provide equal protection for everyone. And so we utilized that mechanism very effectively, and we were able to obtain three types of recommendations from 7 countries. Unfortunately, none of those recommendations were implemented by the government of Mongolia.
Why? Why do you think this is so?
Okay, so one of the main recommendations was to pass a standalone comprehensive law on anti-discrimination. But because the government has already undertaken the definition of hate crimes into the criminal code draft, they think that it's enough, but it is not enough, because we're not only talking about hate crimes, we're talking about general discrimination that can manifest in so many forms, and discrimination, denial of even opportunity to speak about your reality, it is already a huge discrimination, But that is not something that you can say, it is a hate crime. No. You can't go and file a police report saying that somebody is telling me to shut up about my identity or about my life, with my girlfriend or boyfriend, as the case may be. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's not enough. The definition of hate crimes is good, it is necessary, it has to be done, but that is not enough to address various discriminations. And we're not only talking about protecting LGBT community effectively through non-discrimination, anti-discrimination legislation, but we're talking about other minorities. Other minorities meaning religious minorities or ethnic minorities, Kazakh or Doha people, for example. Or we're talking about even, let's say, for example, Mongolians who are married to foreigners, they get so much flack and discrimination, because if you follow your heart and marry out of love to a non-Mongolian, you somehow categorize as anti-patriotic, un-Mongolian, and that is ridiculous. So, yeah, and increasingly, I think that Mongolia is becoming very in so many ways, polarized country now.
Mm-hmm.
We have a huge divide between rich and poor. We have a huge divide between rural and urban, and we have a huge divide between, let's say, sexuality majority and sexuality minority, etc. So we have all these, almost like atomization of a society where different types of identities are being articulated for the first time maybe in the history of Mongolia. We have a situation where the Mongolian identity per se as such is becoming diverse. If it was something like prior to 1921, if Mongolian identity was something quite monolithic, let's say if you're a Mongolian, then you're a herder, and you are a nomad, and your traditional values that have been created throughout centuries and millennia of interacting with the nature and with the livestock. That was your monolithic Mongolian identity.
Not anymore.
And not anymore, because starting from 1921 with the socialist regime, Mongolia becoming the second country in the world to become a socialist country, etc. We have this breakdown of Mongolian identity from one single monolith into various identities. Yeah. And so this process has to be recognized, and this process has to be legitimized and established through a equal protection for everyone, whatever the identities they might have, and whatever the life they might have.
Anna, can I ask you a question? I want to talk a little bit about your personal life, if that's okay. Number one, you've suffered very much going into puberty as a child who on the outside was very different to the person on the inside. Tell me a little bit about your experiences and the dark time that you faced and how you overcame that. Yeah, if you can.
Yeah. I guess. I mean, I can only speak for myself.
Because I'm asking you because people are going to be watching this and they want. I mean, maybe there's some kid at home who's confused and might be suffering inside, not knowing what to do, confused, alone, depressed. I mean, we all get like that, but to be unaccepted by society is very, very different and very difficult. Give them some advice, some of your life experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I can only speak for myself because everybody's life experience is going to be very different. For me, growing up in a more or less educated family, in an environment that was pretty much conducive to, for me to be who I am, still I found it very difficult when it hit puberty.
And you got your period, you write about this.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just that like from the early, childhood, all my aunts and uncles knew that I used to, pee standing up and, like I would do those kind of things. But, and I was a big tomboy.
You were a boy inside.
Exactly. Yeah. And because I never really had brothers, I didn't know that, like you had to have certain appendages or whatever to truly categorize or to truly claim that you're a boy. I didn't know that, but I always felt I was a boy, and that's exactly how I, spent my childhood, playing with the boys and, being rowdy and things like that. But with the first period, it was just incredible feeling of, I don't know, like it was this complete doom, that this was it, that I had a female body and that I was supposed to be a woman, and that was something that I never really even wanted or never really identified with and never wanted. But that was it. Because that's it. That was my biology. That was the body I was born with, and those were my chromosomes. Yeah. And it was so tough. And my parents and my sisters, they knew that I went into a huge depression because up to the age of 10, I used to be just on the street all the time, you know, playing all the time and being a kid. But after 10, I stopped going out, I stopped playing, and I would just hold up, I would just hold up at home. And I would just go to school and then home, school and home. It's like this I don't know, this complete feeling of being not in your body. You know, you dissociate with your body so much that, you know, like up to, I don't know, like maybe, okay, so it's been, 10 years since I met my ex-wife. She used to tell me that you are so dissociated from your body. You don't even know the processes that are taking place in your body. You are completely in your head all the time, and you don't even know your sensations. And it's like, it's so true. And that happened because of the fact that I am a trans man who grew up in a female body, socialized into female role, and that felt so hard and so alien that I would rather distance myself from even my body. And so, I don't know, it's something really personal and difficult, and this is the first time on television that I'm even talking about my identity, my trans identity. Before, I used to just tell people that, you know, I was a lesbian and you know, I had a wife, etc. But deep down, that was not me. And because we think that biology is destiny and that's it. You know, you're just born with this body and that's it. I wasn't aware that I could change it. I wasn't aware that I could actually align my body with how I felt inside.
And be happy. And be happy.
And
a fulfilling
exactly,
life.
Exactly. And when every waking moment of your life, when you're 10, and when every waking moment you feel angry that you were born with a different body, when you know that you're a boy, when you know that you're supposed to be a man, it creates, I don't know, like it creates so much more, I don't know how to say it, like I don't know, I was just a completely angry human being.
But you're not angry anymore.
I'm not angry anymore. I'm so not angry anymore. But that was the let's say background noise of my life. This anger, this frustration that I could not see myself. I could not hear myself. And my body was going, you know, going south, like, you know, with various things growing here and there. And so for the trans kids who might be out there, or
trans kids, gay children,
lesbian children, and adolescents,
what do you tell them? The ones who are suffering and whose parents might not have been who are not as supportive as yours were.
Yeah,
what's your advice to them?
My advice to them would be, just know that whatever you're feeling is valid. That just because you're feeling that you are born in a wrong body and that you cannot associate with your body, it doesn't mean that you are disordered. It doesn't mean that you are crazy. It just means that
you're okay.
Yeah, you are okay. You're completely normal. It's just that some of us have to go through more things to be truly who we are, and some of us, you know, are luckier than that. But some of us have to go through all that, you know, tough time to really, you know, get where we're supposed to be. For trans kids especially, and for LGBT, lesbian, gay, and bisexual kids and adolescents, you know, you love who you love. There's no need to hide. There's no need to be scared. It's love is a beautiful thing. Be scared.
The most important thing.
Be scared of people who don't love anybody. But love as such is beautiful, as long as it's done on a consensual basis, as long as it's done, you know, between adults, it's all fine.
Yeah. You're a very beautiful person.
Thank you. Yes, so are you.
Ah, gosh, listen, what can I do for the LGBT Centre? What can people do to help?
Be open-minded. Be
Open-minded.
open-minded. Talk about LGBT issues, because LGBT issues are not only for us. LGBT issues are not only for the people who are LGBT. It's about creating equal society where everybody is treated equally. If you want to really contribute to, for example, LGBT rights, make sure that you talk about LGBT people. Make sure that you don't deny us our visibility. You don't deny us our existence. Talk about us. Have discussions with your colleagues. Educate yourself. There's so much information available online these days, be it in Mongolian, be it in English, or in any other language. Educate yourself and be willing to be open-minded, because that's the most important thing. Because we're all human beings. Regardless of who we love, and regardless of of our gender identity, we're all human beings.
I wish you all the best in Geneva.
Thank you.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart for coming in, and I look forward to seeing you when you get back.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the
Anar.
invitation. Yeah.
So good to have you on the show. Thank you, my friend. And that's all today, viewers, on Talk With Me. Thank you for joining us, and I hope to see you next week. But for now, Vairsten Darolzi.